That's a yes, we're good. Okay. Thank you, everyone, for waiting. Do I have a motion to return to an open session from our executive session?
So move for
So-
adoption. Second, I'll second.
Ms. Gank, you please call the roll.
Mr. Moon,
Yes.
Mr. Mulligan,
Yes.
Mayor Condrey,
Yes.
Ms. Nenny,
Yes.
Ms. Vittori.
Yes.
Okay. That will open our city council meeting for Tuesday, January 5th, 2021. Let's start with a moment of meditation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And I believe we don't need to do a roll call since we just all voted. Is that accurate, Ms.
Okay,
Cohen?
well, we're just working out one technical difficulty with the slides.
Okay.
I'm just gonna have to have them do it.
So our first order of business are citizen comments, of which I believe we do not have any citizen comments this evening. Correct. Okay, then we'll move on to council comments. We'll start with Ms. Vittori.
I just want to wish everyone a happy new year. Hopefully we had a safe and small holiday season, but keeping ourselves within our little bubbles and hoping that the vaccines continue to roll out and we continue to get back closer to normal. So that's about it. Happy New Year.
Thank you. Mr. Mulligan.
Thank you, Your Honor. Also wishing our City of Middletown staff a very happy new year. Looking forward to working with all of you in 2021. Thanks for all your work over the past 12 months. And as I said in my final comments before Christmas, that, Mr. Palahniuk has a lot of energy, a lot of talent, and looking forward to him deploying resources to make 2021 a breakthrough year for the city in spite of everything that's going on. And I just appreciate all of your efforts. So thanks, and look forward to working with you this year.
Thank you. Mr. Moon.
Yes, thank you. Just wanted to send my condolences to the family of Dr. Walt Rail. Was a lifelong Middletonian, a physician in the community for decades, and just gave back and volunteered in so many ways. And just wanted to acknowledge him and his family and say thank you to them. That's all I have.
Thank you. Ms. Ninny.
Thank you. As my fellow council also wished everyone a happy new year, I also wish everyone a happy new year. It's a time to look back and reflect on the previous year in some respects, and I'll say that my first year on council was less than normal, but I've enjoyed being a part of this decision-making body and working with all of these wonderful people at the city, and continuing to do good things for Middletown and push the city into the future. And I look forward to another year, hopefully an exciting one, hopefully not quite as exciting as this year.
Thank you. I also want to wish our entire city a happy 2021, and we made it through. Here we are. I want to address our boards and commissions real quickly. We've been working very hard to get these in line and value the amount of energy and time that our citizens are putting in to volunteer for all of these different boards and commissions. And we're working through a couple of them still that we'll be needing to make more appointments to yet this year. So when you see that we haven't finalized all of that, it's not that we have forgotten or that we don't appreciate everyone's time. We're just trying to do it by the book and do it right. And so we still need a little bit of clarity in the bylaws and legislation for the Historic Commission. You'll see we have a couple more appointments that we'll be making later this year yet, and also the Citizens Advisory Board. We really value Mr. Stabler and his efforts on that board to get that back in line, and so we're going to be clarifying the bylaws and the makeup of that board as well, so we'll be putting off any appointments for Citizens Advisory Board just a little bit longer till we get that squared away. And that's all I have this evening. Mr. Palaniuk, City Manager Report.
Yes, Madam Mayor, members of City Council, I wanted to make a note to you this evening that you have a slightly amended agenda that came forward today, and I wanted to note why that was. What was ordinance number 21-01, which was to be the extension of a lease agreement with the Salvation Army. We're taking that off there for the following reason. That originally was first put into play back in 1980. It was a 20-year lease. It went from 1980 to 2000. It had the opportunity to extend it for 3 separate 20-year extensions. That first extension was then granted from 2000 through 2020. It expired in May of 2020, and the folks from the Salvation Army were looking for the second extension, which would be another 20-year period. We were bringing that forward, but in doing so, we recognized that that lease, of course, was first put together in 1980. It is not really contemporary at this point in a number of ways. We also recognized that with some of the future plans in that area that might include trying to further the housing plan and moving some of the areas into more industrial property, that it would be appropriate if there was some additional language in this lease to acknowledge what would happen if the city needed to acquire the building from the Salvation Army. It doesn't do that particularly well. So, to make a long story short, we really need to go back, put in some additional language that I think will be entirely acceptable to the Salvation Army. We should probably be able to bring it back at the next meeting, or certainly the one thereafter. So it's just a matter of getting that more appropriate to meet everybody's desired requirements, and as a result, there really isn't any immediate urgency to it. Nothing is changing other than that, so that's the reason why that particular item was coming off. I just want to make a note of that, and that's all I have this evening.
Thank you. Ms. Skank, will you please present the consent agenda for us?
For your consideration this evening, to approve the City Council minutes of October 20th, 2020, to receive and file the following Board and Commission minutes from the Airport Commission of July 20th, September 21st, October 5th, October 12th, and October 19th, 2020, and the Civil Service Commission meeting minutes of October 15th, 2020. To confirm the following personnel appointments: Sarah Bontrager to the position of Water Treatment Assistant Lab Analyst in the Department of Public Works, Division of Water Treatment, and Connor Beal to the position of Patrol Officer in the Department of Public Safety, Division of Police. To confirm the promotional appointments of Omer Hurlbart to the position of Fire Apparatus Operator in the Department of Public Safety, Division of Fire, and Frank Ballman to the position of Fire Captain in the Department of Public Safety, Division of Fire. To receive and file maintenance and performance bonds submitted by Grand Communities LLC, guaranteeing public improvements constructed as part of Renaissance 2, Section 3 subdivision. To accept the resignation of Matt King from the Airport Commission, and to confirm the following Board and Commission appointments: Timothy Eberhart to the Airport Commission, Andrew Brickler to the Historic Commission, Matthew Dixon to the Historic Commission, and Deb Snyder to the Middletown Cemetery Board.
I move to approve the issues and actions set forth in the consent agenda.
Second.
Ms. Skank, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Mulligan,
Yes.
Mayor Condrey,
Yes.
Ms. Vettori,
Yes.
Ms. Nenny,
Yes.
Mr. Moon.
Yes.
We have one item, motion item tonight to authorize a professional services contract with Brown and Caldwell for the owner's advisor services associated with the Phase 2 of the Lakeside Redirection Project.
So moved for
So
adoption.
move for adoption.
Would you like to consider one of those a second?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Skank, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Condrey,
Yes.
Ms. Vettori,
Yes.
Ms. Nenny,
Yes.
Mr. Moon,
Yes.
Mr. Mulligan.
Yes.
All right, Ms. Cohen, will you please present the legislation for us this evening?
Yes, Your Honor. As we noted, we did drop the first matter that was scheduled for this evening. We have 3 remaining items. There are 2 that we are asking to consider as an emergency and appropriate for action this evening. So to ask for a motion to waive charter requirements regarding 2 readings and 30 days to enactment. Regarding the first 2 matters, Ordinance O-2021-02 and Ordinance O-2021-03.
I move to waive the charter provision requiring readings on 2 separate days, and that the previously read ordinance or resolutions be read one time only and be declared emergencies.
Second. Ms. Kank, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Vettori,
Yes.
Ms. Nenny,
Yes.
Mr. Moon,
Yes.
Mr. Mulligan,
Yes.
Mayor Condrey.
Yes.
The first matter for consideration is ordinance O 2021-02, an ordinance determining that Middletown moving forward is no longer needed as the designated agent of the city for industrial, commercial, distribution, and research development, rescinding the agency of Middletown moving forward, terminating for cause such related agreement, and declaring an emergency.
So move for adoption.
Second.
Ms. Kank, will you please call the roll?
Do we have a staff presentation?
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you for that. Yes.
Yes, Madam Mayor, members of City Council, I'd like to provide a little bit of background on this item as well as the next item because they are inextricably linked. Also, I will tell you that with us this evening, we have Caleb Bell. Caleb is an attorney with Bricker and Eckler. He is working on behalf of the city and assisting the Economic Development Department as we put together these organizational structures and move forward with this. So this first item is basically, what happened is I think we started looking as we imagined how we want to move forward with a number of different economic development projects. Exactly if or not the CIC, which is our Community Improvement Corporation, which we titled Middletown Moving Forward, was in fact the best vehicle. Is its mission appropriate? Does it serve our best interest? Is it the kind of thing that's going to be able to do anything and everything in the manner that's going to be the most effective and efficient for us? And as we started thinking about those things, we recognized that there probably was, in fact, a different vehicle that not only could accomplish everything that the CIC had done and everything we wanted to do with economic development, but to have a number of other things that could be added to it that would actually assist us in ways that really will be quite much more helpful in terms of some of the economic development projects that we want to do. And that is actually to first take away the agency of the CIC, of Middletown Moving Forward, as on behalf of the city, and then create a successor agency that would ultimately take on those same roles and some expanded additional roles, and that would be a municipal port authority. So this first item is, in effect, rescinding that agency of having Middletown Moving Forward continue to act as the entity that would serve the city's benefit for various economic development incentives when it comes to industrial, commercial, et cetera. And then instead, with the next item, we would in turn be creating a Middletown Port Authority. And a CIC is a sort of independent entity that allows us to do a number of things because at arm's length it can own property, it can sell property, it can make loans, it can act in a number of ways that assist economic development. The Port Authority can also do those things, but there are a couple of principal additional things that really would offer us some rather exceptional assistance, particularly for some of the projects on the residential side that we want to do. And one of those is the ability to offer a sales tax exemption. So for instance, if we had a residential project that we wanted to do as an infill perhaps, maybe somebody wanted to do, let's just pick a number, $30 million project to do market rate, quality, multifamily housing on an infill lot. And we wanted to offer them a sales tax exemption. That would be against all of the value of the construction materials. So let's imagine the value of those construction materials on that size of a project might be about 50% of the total cost, so they're about $15 million. So $15 million at the sales tax rate locally would amount to something on the order of maybe $900,000 in savings to the project. So that's an immediate incentive that that project wouldn't have to pay, that we would be able to allow and grant to it. But in turn, a port authority then also has the ability to charge a fee, if you will, for granting that exemption. In some cases, that could be, say, 20%. And that is, I think, what the Warren County Port Authority does. In that case, if you charge 20%, then that project still is getting a substantial economic incentive, but it has also now created a revenue source for the Port Authority of several $100,000 that can then go back to doing an economic development revolving loan fund to fund that, to put further money into projects over time. The second thing that a Port Authority can do is actually authorize and issue tax-exempt bond financing. So let's go to that same residential project that we would imagine and say not only can it get a sales tax exemption, but part of the financing could be as a tax-exempt bond issued by the Port Authority. The Port Authority can also work with other port authorities. It can assist with all kinds of creative things, including land banks and others. So there's just a number of reasons that it sort of serves us better than the existing CIC. The other thing is it gives greater local control. The board is typically appointed by the city council. Not typically, it is appointed by the city council. It is a smaller number, usually 5 or 7. We are proposing 7 in this case. We have proposed, and that will be something you'll take up in a future meeting, that those 7 members include 4 community business leaders that have come from the Middletown Moving Forward, so that we have continuity from similar people who have already been dedicated and committed to the community, and that they also move forward to the successor agency. But then in addition, that a member of city council sit on the board, as well as the city manager and the economic development director. So each and every one of those individuals then would have very much the city's economic development interests at heart, and would be able to be certain that it made decisions in the best interest of the city. With regard to what happens as we move away from the CIC, we disband it, and we create a successor agency that takes over. This first act tonight is simply removing the agency, so there will be other acts that we will look to take in the future at the next meeting. And with that regard, in terms of the loans that are outstanding, and there are 2 outstanding loans with Middletown Moving Forward. One was for the Torchlight Pass project. The other is for the Getz Tower. The understanding would be, and we would look to do that at the next meeting, that the successor agency, Port Authority, would then take on those loans, would administer those loans, and continue to manage those loans. Any funds that were held in addition to loans by the Middletown Moving Forward also would typically come forward to the successor agency. However, in the case of at least the Duke Energy funds, we would look to Duke Energy to determine, because that was their determination to provide the funding to Middletown Moving Forward. To the extent it hasn't been put out into the community as loans and is simply being held, I think they would have the ability to say whether or not they want it to move forward to the successor agency. It would be our goal that they do so. We would request that they do so, but still it would be their determination. I would look to Mr. Bell to answer any more specific questions that you have with regard to how these things happen in terms of the type of entity that this is, what its liability is, issues of that, how it relates to the city as an entity. So I would offer Mr. Bell's advice to any and all of those kinds of questions that you may have.
Sure, I have a question. Mr. Bell or Mr. Palahniuk, it sounds like this would be a similar to the boards and commissions we just appointed. It is a city board. It is not a public-private partnership like Middletown Moving Forward was or is. Is that correct?
I will look to Mr. Bell, but I believe it's a separate political subdivision. I'll let him speak to that.
Yes, that's right. Councilman and city manager, yes, that's correct. It is a separate political subdivision of the state. It is uniquely created by another political subdivision, you all as city council representing the city, but it does get separate treatment it would have its own audit, for example. It does have a separate board. It is treated as a separate political subdivision. The way that most port authorities work with cities, particularly municipal port authorities work with their city, is by agreement. There are cooperative agreements, either standing arrangements or individual project-specific arrangements that animate the relationship between the two entities.
So to that end, it only reports to itself, is that correct, or does it report to the city?
It is populated by an unelected board. That board is appointed by city council. So in a way, city council has a governance responsibility with respect to this board, i.e. Appointing replacements and filling vacancies and confirming the mission of the entity. However, the board will take independent action from city council on activities before the Port Authority, such as approving a loan or entering into a property agreement with a developer, let's say.
So their bank, their checking account, their tax filings would all be independent of the city, and I would assume that
Correct.
the liability or negligence, if the board ever acted in that manner, the liability would lie with that board and not with the city as well. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yes, that is correct, Councilman. The result would be separate insurance, separate liability provisions, and like other political subdivisions, the Port Authority board officers and the board directors are entitled to the same protections that government officials like yourselves enjoy, under Ohio's public officials laws. Conversely, the Port Authority is a public entity. It is subject to public records. It's subject to open meetings, and all of those, activities keep its activity open.
Now, if I might add, right now, for us to access some of the things of a port authority, we would have to be going either to the Warren County Port Authority or the Butler County Port Authority. Now, again, because those are independent political subdivisions, they may or may not want to or be willing to grant, certain things to projects in our city. For instance, maybe they wouldn't believe that it would be appropriate to grant a sales tax exemption for residential project. Or maybe they wouldn't feel it was appropriate to do tax exempt bond financing for a particular project. And we would have no control over that. So in our case, while yes, this is an independent political subdivision, the nature and the makeup of the board is designed that this city council maintains a great deal of control. And obviously, because one of your own will actually be a board member, and hopefully 2 of your staff people will be board members, and you will be appointing 4 members from among your community that will be hand-selected to do the kinds of economic development projects and support the kinds of economic development projects that you're looking for. I think that you'll ultimately have a great deal of power, influence, and control over what this board does. So we feel very comfortable that it will work very much on behalf of the interest of the city council at the time, even though it is, in this case, an independent political subdivision.
Since most people think of a port as a location where there are massive ships coming in and out, is someone able to clarify for us who is able to form a port authority and why Middletown fits into that?
I think we'll look to Mr. Bell to respond to that.
Sure, it's a great question. Everybody always asks me, why are there so many ports in Ohio? There's just a bunch of counties with no lakes. What's going on? I think port authorities started to be used as financing entities all the way back to New York. The Port Authority of New York, New Jersey was an early example of this, where its mission for trade became one that was really more about finance than it was about actually moving goods. And so port authorities proliferated across the country over the last 30, 40 years as finance entities. So there are approximately 60 port authorities in Ohio. There are probably about 5 or so that are municipal. There are a few township port authorities. Most are county or city-county joinders. However, in large counties, you tend to find municipal port authorities sometimes. For example, over to your east, your neighbors there in Mason, Ohio, have a municipal port authority that is separate from the Warren County government, Warren County Port Authority. Who can form a port authority? Any of a city, any county, or any township may form a port authority by legislative action. They may also join together and do joint legislative action. That's typically done in the large urban settings like the Dayton, Montgomery County Port Authority, for example.
May I also add that we spoke to in advance the folks from Warren County, that Port Authority. As you know, we're working very closely with them as a partner on the mall redevelopment project. They have no objections at all to this. We will continue to work closely with them. It won't alter in any way our partnership on the mall project. There could be opportunities in the future for our Port Authority and that Port Authority to work closely together. It could access their bond fund. So there are lots of nice partnership opportunities. It won't in any way preclude that continuing. We also, spoke to at least one county commissioner from Butler County so that they were well aware that we were looking to move this forward, and we received a positive reception there as well. So we didn't want to do this in any way to either usurp authority from anyone else or to step on toes, but rather to, in a very aggressive, proactive way, accomplish the kinds of economic development that we want to do for our community and access all of the possible tools that are available.
Thank you. And on that vein, have we also discussed with current MMF members this?
We did, yes. And we will be making a recommendation, which we have in effect already, that 4 of those private sector members would be continuing on as board members of the Port Authority. And then some of those who would not have that opportunity, we have talked to them as well, but we've noted that there certainly could be opportunities in the future again as new people come or go off the Port Authority.
And are those, the meetings for the Port Authority, would those fall under the Ohio Open Meetings Act laws as well, so people could attend if they wished? As public? Okay.
Yes, the answer to that is yes. It would comply with essentially the same rules that City Council complies with.
I would just want to add, regardless of what happens on these 2 pieces of legislation, I wanted to express my appreciation to anybody past or present that serves on the MMF board. They've spent countless hours of fundraising and brainstorming the best ways to help drive development in this community. So I just wanted to publicly thank them for all of their work.
And I just want to echo that and also commend staff and Jim for taking an aggressive and progressive approach to something that can really help drive economic development.
Any other comments or questions from council or from staff?
I guess it's one last thing. One of the important parts, too, that I wouldn't want to gloss over is with the CIC, it was hard to generate revenues. We were, in effect, going hat in hand, asking others to contribute funds to it, and it had no real means of its own other than from the city or foundations or things like that. So as I noted, with a Port Authority, there are actually a few different means that could actually generate some revenues, and those revenues in turn would wind up going back to the community to make even more loans and more of a difference for economic development. So one of the big reasons we really like this avenue is that fact that, again, hopefully we won't be coming to the city so much, that the Port Authority can actually be self-supporting over time.
Great. Any other comments or questions? Okay, Ms. Skin, can you please call the roll?
Ms. Nenny,
Yes.
Mr. Moon,
Yes.
Mr. Mulligan,
Yes.
Mayor Condrey,
Yes.
Ms. Vettori.
Abstain.
Next matter is ordinance O-2021-03, an ordinance authorizing the creation of the Middletown Port Authority and providing for the organization thereof and declaring an emergency.
So move for adoption.
Second.
And Mr. Palaniuk, do you have anything to add on this? I think we covered everything, but,
Yeah, I think we have, unless there are additional questions.
okay, any more questions?
No question, but I would just say that I do plan to support this, and I think it's an incredibly powerful economic development tool, and look forward to seeing this group get to work, and hopefully it will be very busy.
Great. Ms. Skank, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Moon,
Yes.
Mr. Mulligan,
Yes.
Mayor Condrey,
Yes.
Ms. Nenny,
Yes.
Ms. Vettori.
Yes.
Next matter will be ordinance O 2021-04, and ordinance amending the pay and benefits ordinances, ordinances number O 2020-69, and ordinance number O 2020-70, and declaring an emergency, but no action is requested until the next meeting.
Mr. Palaniuk, do you have comments on this?
Yes, Madam Mayor, members of council, we have these pay and benefits ordinances that from time to time we need to make amendments to for certain, things that happen within our personnel situations. In this case, we're doing a couple of things. One is we currently have a job classification of Assistant Public Works Superintendent / Safety Officer. We are in a position where we have two different Assistant Public Works Superintendents. By removing that / Safety Officer, we have more flexibility to assign either of those two assistants various different functions. So by taking that off, we're just making that more flexible. The second thing is we're creating a classification of permit specialist, which with this budget year, the job that we created was the person that will be sort of the one-stop shop to assist and sort of coordinate a lot of the different permitting activity for various departments so that we, from an outward-facing position as a city to the public, can be more effective and efficient when granting, administering, and issuing permits. So in order to have that position, we now have to add that classification. The other thing is we're looking to add a section in Section 3 called subsection K. It really is providing something as a result of the pandemic, and it says specifically that in the event of a public health pandemic, the city manager may, at his sole discretion, award exempt employees within the Middletown Board of Health, Public Health, cash bonus payments to those working over and above their regular work week without overtime compensation. So as you might imagine, during this last year in a pandemic, our public health department, where there are, I think, 3 exempt employees, one is part-time, 2 are full-time, have just worked unbelievable number of hours. I mean, just exemplary, extraordinary, beyond the pale, you wouldn't imagine, because obviously in a pandemic, you have no choice. And yet, in their exempt status, they're really not eligible for overtime, and they're not getting anything. We don't have the ability to give them much comp time because they have to work so many hours that they're working, and that's the last thing we can do is have them off. So we wanted to acknowledge in some, at least minor way, an ability to offer some additional bonus. So this is only in the event of a pandemic. It's limited to no more than 5% of an annual salary. The total effect on the budget would be not more than $15,000 if in fact we granted this in every case. But I think it's appropriate for the extraordinary effort that these particular employees do. And, anybody that's seen what a public health person has to do in the course of the last year when it comes to all of the contact tracing, all of the education, all of the efforts to keep up with the governor's issues and all of the other things it's just amazing. So that was the reason for this, and we would hope that it does get approval.
And just to clarify, that's the Department of Health, not the Board of Health, right?
It is the Middletown Board of Health. They are technically, and I'll look to Susan for this, they're employees of the Board of Health.
The Board of Health.
Yeah.
They're aligned with the city, but they're actually employees of the Board of Health.
I did not realize that. Okay. I was looking at the verbiage and it said Health Department, and anyway, okay, I'll review it fully before we
If you
vote
have
on it
questions
next meeting.
before the next
No
meeting,
problem.
I'd be happy to discuss it with you.
Sounds good. Great.
But yes, it is what you would know as the Health Department. As for
Right.
Employees that are exempt.
Okay. Are there any staff comments or questions at this time? Okay. That's all we have for this meeting, so we will adjourn until January 19th, 2021, here in council chambers at 5:30 PM. Until then, blue skies over Middletown.